This plane flew from New Zealand to Antarctica for a sightseeing attraction. It was supposed to be a fun time for all the passengers to enjoy the unique view of the continent. However, when they arrived, they couldn't even see anything, and they began to panic until the plane hit a massive mountain, killing everyone on board. This incident caused controversies, and initially, all the fingers were pointed at the pilots, deeming them responsible for the disaster. However, the case development created a twist that shed some light on the case, because the truth offers a bizarre explanation that left everyone shook. In the 1970s, this airline called Air New Zealand provided flights going over Antarctica, which at that time was one of the biggest tourist attractions for a lot of people. They marketed this as a unique sightseeing experience because people who go on these trips can enjoy a low-flying sweep at McMurdo Sound, which is just north to Antarctica near the North Sea. Not only that, they also had an experienced guide pointing out the beauty of the landmarks around the area. Overall, it was a breath of fresh air for tourists looking to visit some unexplored parts of the world. This business was booming and continued for more than a year until a disaster struck. On November 28, 1979, Air New Zealand flight TE901 was scheduled to take off for that day's sightseeing flight. It was piloted by Captain Jim Collins and First Officer Greg Gasson, who were all experienced professionals but had never previously flown this Antarctica route. So this was a new thing for them. However, they've been closely debriefed that they would be going over the McMurdo Sound. So with this, the flight was all well prepared. Now, this had advanced technology because it flew automatically. So they entered the coordinates into the system and expected the plane to go through that route. So the plane took off and arrived near Antarctica in just a few hours. As they were approaching their destination, the pilots sent a message to the U.S. Navy's Air Control Center at McMurdo Station that they would lower the plane around 2,000 feet so that the passengers could have a better and clearer look on the continent. Though this distance was actually below the safe levels, it was still considered normal for this kind of flight because you want to give the best scenery to your passengers. However, around 5 minutes later, all communications just kind of disappeared, and the US Navy lost track of them. So they got worried, and within an hour, they sent out search and rescue airplanes to look over the area. And what they found was tragic. They discovered a plane shattered all over Mount Erebus. It was the TE901 plane. It crashed into the mountain, and nobody survived. Soon this accident was all over the news, and very quickly people pointed out the strange circumstances. Because how did a modern plane with high-end technological advancements just crash into a big mountain in broad daylight? Why didn't anyone notice what was coming? To answer all the curiosity, an investigation was launched in 1980 by an inspector called Ron Chippendale. He specialized in air incidents and was also formerly a very prominent pilot for the Royal Air Force. In his reports, he concluded that the pilots were at fault in this incident because Collins and Cassin shouldn't have lowered the plane below the safe minimum altitude. He believed it was the main cause of the unfortunate crash. However, this investigation report proved to be controversial, as there were many people that sided with the pilots. So due to public demand, another party was inquired to take over the case. This time, it was the Royal Commission of Inquiry, led by Peter Mahon, who was a New Zealand High Court judge. In a report released in 1981, Mahon made a conclusion that was the complete opposite of Chippendale's. Mahon stated that it wasn't the pilots who were at fault, it was the airline. Because apparently before the flight, Air New Zealand had changed the flight path from McMurdo Sound all the way to over Mount Erebus without even telling the crew. Now this was a shock to everyone, because why would the airline shift the direction of the flight to a dangerous area with an active volcano, and they didn't even communicate it with the pilots? What's going on here? Well, Mahon had the answer, because he then went on to accuse the airline of an orchestrated litany of lies, because he believed that the reason they held the pilots responsible was to cover up a computer blunder that led to the crash. So how did it happen? Well, let's head all the way back to 1977, where it all started. So originally, this whole Antarctica sightseeing flights operated through the Mount Erebus route. At that time, they were able to just kind of weave away from the planned nav track and maintain good service and horizon definition without any weather problems. Then after 18 months, which was 14 months before the incidents, the airline started using a computer to produce flight plans because the technology got better at that time. However, they made a little error when one of the flight operators keyed a 4 instead of a 6 into the computer, which is supposed to be a small change, but in reality, it's quite big, because after this change, the flight route shifted 30 miles to the west from Mount Erebus to McMurdo Sound. However, they didn't notice this error because it just made sense to shift away from an active volcano because it was a bit dangerous. So ever since then, they continued using this route over McMurdo Sound because it produced a way safer result. Now fast forward to 1979, just one night before the flight. The flight planners decided to make what they thought was a small correction, which was shifting the final Antarctic waypoint about 2 miles to the east. But this correction proved to be fatal, because due to the same error that happened 2 years ago, this flight shifted not 2 miles, but 30 miles off the east, directly over Mount Erebus. Here's the thing though, the entire crew members on that flight that day, including briefing officers and publicity staff, weren't even alerted about this shift. They thought they were going through McMurdo Sound path, which was why Collins and Cassim felt confident in lowering the plane's altitude, because they were sure that it was safe and that they were about to see the beautiful view over McMurdo Sound. However, because of an optical illusion known as whiteout, which essentially made the view of the sky, land, and horizon blend together, so it was practically impossible for anyone inside the plane to determine what they're seeing, because everything was just white, except for this one flight engineer named Gordon Brooks, who noticed something wasn't right as he voiced his concern, saying, "I don't like this." However, it was too late, because 26 seconds later, the plane hit the mountain, killing all 237 passengers and 20 crew members. The case was then moved further to court, with Mahan trying to appeal to overturn Chippendale's reports. However, even with clear and concise examination within Mahan's findings, the New Zealand government decided that Chippendale's report was the only acceptable one, and they deemed Mahan's findings as a mere conspiracy. In 2019, the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern and Air New Zealand finally apologized, and Mahan was praised as a hero in the eyes of the public for unraveling the truth of the Erebus disaster. As we reflect on the haunting events of the Erebus disaster, the truth has finally seen the light after a series of controversies. This incident is proof that we can't fully believe in one narrative, because what's hidden behind might be the key to unlocking the truth. What do you think of the circumstances revolving around the Erebus disaster? Do you think the New Zealand government should have accepted Mahan's findings and hold Air New Zealand accountable for covering the flight error? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more intriguing mysteries.